Well, hello and welcome back to DreamYard. Before we continue with a new lesson, I think it's really good to review what we did with our last project. For example, can you think of any art vocabulary words that might relate to this project that we did? What about physical traits? What about personality traits? That relates to this project. And what kind of drawing is this? It's a portrait drawing, you're right. So why don't we start to make an art vocabulary list that we can add to our word wall. Let's write down the words and their definitions together. So one of our words is physical traits. A physical trait is something about a person's face or body that you can see without even knowing them. One way to identify me would be through describing my physical traits. They don't describe my personality. Let's get to that next. A personality trait is something about a person's behavior that you often notice. Oh, another word that we have to have on our wall is portrait. A portrait is a drawing that focuses on just the face.
Sometimes it's best to understand the definition of a word by giving examples and to see how the word is used. So while I'm doing a portrait, why don't you do a practice portrait also? That way we can see how the words apply to the project that we're doing. I'm going to create a new portrait, and as I do, I'm going to introduce you to some new vocabulary words. That way I can give you an example of how the words are used and how they apply to your artwork. The red line I'm drawing is called a guideline. Guidelines help to guide us and figure out where things go in our drawings. This guideline will help me create symmetry. If something is divided in half, if it looks the same on one side as the other, then that is an example of symmetry. Now when I make my oval shape for my head, I can use my guideline to make sure that it's centered. I can also use that guideline to create symmetry. If you were doing your own portrait, you could either draw a line down the center of your paper, or you could fold it in half and use that as your guideline. Let me give you some more examples of symmetry. I'll use this whiteboard to divide my face in half. To practice my symmetry, I would draw my face, I would divide it in half, I would draw the features on one side and try to make the features look exactly the same on the other side. We're not robots or computers, so sometimes it's hard to achieve symmetry. But look what happens. If I change my eye direction or my expression on one side, then the drawing no longer has symmetry. Can you tell which expression gives me the best symmetry to go along with the drawing I've already created? Now that we've used a center guideline to help us create symmetry, let's use some other guidelines to help us place the features on the face. We'll use 3 more guidelines. One to show us where the eyes will go, another one for the nose, and another guideline for the mouth. Let's start with the guideline for our eyes. Remember, eyes are not in your forehead, so place them halfway down your oval shape. And guidelines are always drawn as light as possible because they will be erased at the end of the drawing. Now let's place the other 2 guidelines, one for the nose and one for the mouth. Notice how the guideline for the nose is really small and the guideline for the mouth is just a little longer. To create the outer shape of the eye, use a half circle. In order to achieve symmetry, I want to make sure that the eyes are the same size and shape on both sides. Now it's time to draw the eyeball. The eyeball really is a circle, but the circle is sometimes hard to see because the top part of your eye covers the top part of the circle. Now we can create the bottom part of our eye just by darkening in the guidelines that are directly under the eyes. I like to add light reflections in the eye, so I draw 2 little circles within each eyeball and then color in around them. To draw the nose, let's start at the bottom. There are 3 parts to the bottom of your nose. There's the center part, which can be drawn on your guideline like a U shape. Then the 2 sides where the nostrils are, just close them up like parentheses. Next, we'll draw the bridge of the nose, which connects the bottom part to the top part, and it flows right into the eyebrows. One of the physical traits I want in my portrait is for this person to have thick, arched eyebrow. I'm going to add a little bit more details to my eyes by adding some eyelids and some eyelashes. Now, let's go on to the lips. You ever notice that little curve in the top center part of your lips? Well, let's try to create that, and we'll use two of our guidelines to help us with that. Use your center guideline to create a V shape slightly above your mouth guideline. That little V shape will represent the curve in your lip. Now that you've made your V shape, use a slanted line to connect the top part of your V to your mouth guideline. You do that on one side and repeat it on the other side. Now you have your top lip. Now you want to make the bottom lip, and for that, it's just a half circle that connects one side of the mouth to the other. To create our ears, we'll use the guideline we use for our eyes to show us where the top part of our ear begins. Once you make your ear shapes, don't forget to put some little squigglies in them. But it's time to finish up our portrait with the neck and the shoulders. Draw two short lines to represent the neck, and for the shoulders, they need to be broad and slanted. So make a long slanted lines that come from the neck, and then curve it and go down to create the shoulders going into the arm. And then I make a big V on the lower part of the neck to represent the shirt. If you want to learn some tips on how to draw hair, stay tuned for our next lesson. But for now, let's focus on our vocabulary words. There was portrait, symmetry, physical trait, personality trait. Oh, and I've got two new vocabulary words, proportion and composition. But I'll explain those in our next lesson. For now, if you have any of your DreamYard artwork or writing, keep it in one place. I'm keeping mine in a folder. I'm also going to add all those new vocabulary words to our word wall. Till next time, PS51.